The humid Mexican night pulsed with the impatient thrum of the ship's generators. In the makeshift control room, the smell of stale coffee and overheated electronics hung heavy. Dr. Alex Harris ignored them both, his eyes trained on the flickering screens reflecting in his glasses.
Nothing. Another blank sector,
he muttered, the exhaustion roughening his voice. A figure materialized beside him, perfume heavy enough to cut through the technical stench.
Dr. Harris, I do believe progress reports are part of our agreement.
Her voice was as manicured as her nails, with an undercurrent of steel. Alex glanced up, his annoyance barely veiled.
Ms. Sinclair, this cave system is vast. Charting it takes time. Even your money can't alter the laws of physics.
Elena Sinclair's lips pursed into a tight smile that promised nothing pleasant. She tapped a perfectly sculpted nail on one of the screens.
And what of this?
She indicated a cluster of sonar anomalies deep within the map.
My experts suggested these readings hint at man-made structures.
If your experts were worth their salaries, they'd realize those are geologic formations. Textbook examples, in fact.
Alex retorted. Sinclair leaned closer, her breath on his neck like a cold draft.
I care little for textbook, Doctor. What I need are results. You promised me the lost city, a king's ransom lying untouched beneath the waves. Yet you deliver cave drawings.
She gestured at the rest of the cramped space. The technicians, the piles of costly equipment.
This operation burns through cash with alarming speed. My investors grow restless.
Her implication hung unspoken, a shadow far more dangerous than any lurking in the caves below. Alex felt a flicker of unease. He was a scientist, not a pawn in some rich woman's treasure hunt.
There's no guarantee a city even exists,
he said.
But this ecosystem, it's unique, scientifically priceless. That alone warrants.
Sinclair cut him off with a dismissive wave.
Spare me the academic drivel. If I wanted oceanography lectures, I'd have hired Cousteau's grandson. You, Harris, are my tool, and tools that stop working get replaced.
She turned, the rustle of her designer dress vanishing down the corridor. Alex stared at the screens, their wavering lines now blurring. Sinclair's dismissal had hit a nerve. He wasn't just a researcher, damn it. He prided himself on his breakthroughs, on pushing technology to the limit. Yet, here he was, reduced to a glorified sonar technician at the whim of a woman who only understood gold. His fingers tightened on the console. Fine. If she wanted results, he'd give them to her. There were still unexplored depths, anomalies still uninvestigated. He was the best in his field. He'd find something to satiate her greed, even if it meant venturing into the uncharted darkness waiting below.
The first tendrils of dawn painted the sea in a deceptive calm. Our research vessel, the aptly named Fortuna, bobbed unglamorously at anchor. Below the surface, the real show waited. A maze of tunnels promising either groundbreaking discovery or spectacularly expensive failure. Elena Sinclair stood at the railing beside me, her eyes hidden behind those ridiculous designer sunglasses. Not a bead of sweat on her, of course, while I was melting inside my dive suit.
Remember, Dr. Harris, time is quite literally money, burning through my pockets as we speak.
She didn't bother lowering her voice. The rest of the crew probably had a running betting pool on how long I'd last. Duly noted, I gritted out. We're going in as soon as the drones are prepped. Her lips curved into that infuriating half-smile.
Excellent. I expect my first glimpse of gold by nightfall.
Yeah, no pressure. I gestured to the sleek torpedo-shaped machines being lowered from the deck, all custom-built to my ridiculous specifications. My pride and joy, and hopefully, the reason I wasn't being tossed overboard as shark bait right about now. First deployment, basic recon drones, I explained, trying to maintain some semblance of professionalism. Standard grid mapping, 3D sonar, gives us a topographical overview. The tech jargon was my shield. Behind it, I was buzzing with the rush only the unknown could give. Sinclair naturally just looked bored, but the moment the first drone hit the water, I forgot all about her. My focus narrowed to the data feed. The cave entrance gaped like a hungry maw on the main screen. Then, the drone's lights pierced the gloom, and visuals started flooding in. It was astonishing. Textbook geology was right, but that did nothing to convey the sheer scale. Stalactites like icy fangs, limestone structures that flowed like frozen waterfalls, and then a flash of color on a cavern wall. Carvings. Crude, yet unmistakable. Mayan, I breathed. Sinclair was instantly at my shoulder, her presence as sudden as a cold front.
Gold!
She demanded, her voice sharp. No, but this validates the legends. There might actually be something beyond these caves, an entire submerged...
Focus, Harris!
She snapped.
Cities don't interest me, treasure does.
My excitement fizzled like a faulty circuit. Of course it did. The first day was a maddening dance. The drones revealed an intricate labyrinth, but easy progress ended where the tunnels narrowed. Elena's impatience grew with each passing hour, along with the unease gnawing at the back of my mind. We were pushing into uncharted territory with gear designed for more open environments. Time for the heavy hitters, I announced as sunset stained the sky blood red. An apt metaphor, come to think of it. I'd saved the best for last, smaller armored drones packing sonar arrays that made the military stuff I'd seen on contract work look like walkie-talkies. The plan: send them deeper, push through the choke points, see what lay beyond. Elena hovered close, an insatiable gleam in her eyes. We watched as the beefier drone vanished into a crack barely wide enough to admit it. The data feed turned into a flickering mess at first, signal struggling to cut through the rock. Then the image stabilized, and I let out a low whistle.
What is that?
Sinclair was practically breathing down my neck, the designer perfume replaced by a nervous sweat. Even with the choppy visual, there was no mistaking it. The drone had reached a chamber of staggering size. But it wasn't empty. Geometric shapes, too regular to be natural, jutted from the gloom. It looked like... architecture, I murmured. My God, Sinclair, it looks like architecture. Finally, she sounded impressed.
Scale.
She leaned closer to the screen.
Can we get a better image?
Pushing the sonar to max, I said, tweaking the dials. But we'll risk frying the circuits if...
If there's a Mayan El Dorado down there, Harris, I'll buy you a whole new damn lab.
Yeah, greed was a powerful motivator. I cranked up the sonar, ignoring the warning lights flashing on the drone's status panel. The image bloomed, sharpening in agonizing increments. Then, the feed died with an electronic squeal. Darkness swallowed the screen. Damn it, I smacked the console. We pushed it too hard. Sinclair's shriek pierced the control room.
Is it gone? The drone, is it gone?
My stomach twisted. Those babies didn't come cheap. No, the tether. I traced the cable leading to the drone's blinking icon on the map. It snagged inside the cave system, cut off clean. Elena was beside herself, raving about wasted money, delays, and breach of contract. I tuned her out, running diagnostics on the severed cable. The cut was too clean, not the jagged tear you'd get from snagging on a rock. More like a very, very large set of teeth. Ridiculous, right? Yet the image kept flickering across my mind. Brief glimpse of those massive structures. That sudden sonar overload right before the drone went dead. The scientist in me demanded answers. The sane part of me was screaming to get the hell out of here. By the time Elena stormed off, muttering what I suspect were highly creative legal threats, I'd made my decision. Not my smartest, admittedly, but pride is a stubborn beast. Prep my dive suit, I told the crew. I'm going down. The shocked protest started immediately, diving alone into an unexplored, submerged cave system. It was more than reckless. It was a potential death sentence. I brushed them off with reassurances about safety protocols and pre-mapped routes. The truth was, I needed that hands-on connection. Needed to see it for myself. 20 minutes later, I descended into the icy water. The dive light sliced through the murky depths, and the familiar weight of the tank settled my nerves for about 5 seconds. Then, I entered the tunnel where the drone had been lost. The space tightened, the limestone walls pressing in. The sense of going deeper, not just geographically, but back in time, was overwhelming. The beam of my dive light hit another carving. A feathered serpent, a recurring Mayan motif. Legends place these creatures as guardians. Ridiculous, obviously, but a primal shiver ran down my spine nonetheless. And then, it happened. A flicker at the edge of my vision. Not machinery this time. It came again. A flash of something impossibly large. Bioluminescence rippling along its massive body. For a heart-stopping moment, it felt like the darkness itself was coiling around me. I spun, the dive light casting wildly. Nothing. Just the relentless crush of the cave. The emptiness that echoed back my own frantic breaths. A trick of the light, probably. Nitrogen narcosis messing with my head at this depth. Of course. I pushed on, forcing myself to follow the preset course. I wouldn't admit it, but every shadow felt alive. Every flicker of movement made my pulse skyrocket. There, by the faintest bioluminescence, another Mayan carving. A monstrous face, jaws gaping. Superstitious nonsense, I told myself firmly. Then the sonar blipped. One ping, then another, closing in fast. From behind. I whipped around, heart pounding. The sonar was spiking, but the water remained eerily empty. Then, it registered a massive object directly above me. I angled the light upwards, breath catching in my throat. Two shapes, immense and glowing, hovered like malevolent eyes in the gloom. They dwarfed even those fleeting glimpses earlier. With a surge of adrenaline, I realized they weren't just circling. They were descending. Panic sliced through the scientific detachment. I kicked for the surface, but the tunnel felt tight, like a noose closing. Another form materialized from the inky depths below me, cutting off my escape. Trapped. And then it lunged. The impact sent me tumbling, vision exploding into stars. Equipment tore loose as I fought against the disorienting spin. My precious light clattered away uselessly, swallowed by the abyss. I managed to activate the built-in emergency beacon on my suit, a pitiful little flare against the crushing dark. Through the fading glow, I saw it. Not fully, just the immensity of the creature. The curve of a fin-like appendage bigger than a truck, the maw lined with rows of faintly luminous teeth. It was less like a shark, and more like something dredged up from the prehistoric depths. I scrambled for the propulsion unit on my suit, fingers clumsy with terror. It sputtered to life, and I shot forward just as the creature swiped again, the water displacement nearly tearing me in half. The ascent was a blur. Rational thought drowned out by the screaming need to get out. Get up. I breached the surface, gasping like a landed fish, hands scrabbling for the ladder on the side of the Fortuna.
Harris! My God, man, what happened?
Elena's voice, normally so shrill, was laced with genuine shock. The crew was there too, hauling me onto the deck like I weighed nothing. Someone was stripping off my ruined dive gear, another voice barking for medical. Creature was all I could choke out, the image of those glowing eyes seared into my brain. It attacked me. Elena cut through my babbling.
Footage? Did you get footage?
I stared at her, the absurdity hitting me in the face of my near-death experience. Then I laughed. It might have been a touch hysterical. No footage, I said between the coughs racking my body. But tell you what, I got the next best thing. I yanked up my sleeve, showing her the tooth embedded in my dive suit. It was easily the size of my hand, serrated, and faintly glowing even in the dim evening light. In retrospect, what should have terrified me most wasn't the tooth or the near drowning, but the look in Elena Sinclair's eyes when I presented it. Not fear, but a predatory calculation. The next few days were a whirlwind. Medical declared me fit, surprisingly enough. While I recuperated, the remaining drones scoured the cave system, their feeds now dissected with a disturbing level of scrutiny. That initial chamber, where I'd lost the drone, now dubbed the Vault by a morbidly amused crew member, became our obsession. Despite the chaos, the work had an odd rhythm. Every sonar ping, every foot of mapped tunnel was bringing the legend into chilling focus. My original assessment, the giant aquatic beast being a rare, undiscovered species, started to feel laughably naive. This thing was old, older than any marine biology textbook could explain. Elena spent hours poring over the Mayan carvings I'd photographed before the incident. consulting with some shadowy advisors flown in by private jet. Their hushed conferences made my skin crawl. Then came the breakthrough that shattered any leftover hopes of this being pure scientific discovery. A section of the vault was finally mapped in detail. The etchings I'd initially dismissed as stylized turned out to be disturbingly accurate. The image that emerged chilled me, a massive bioluminescent creature, part cephalopod, part something unclassifiable, surrounded by kneeling figures, tribute bearers.
Myths are just history we haven't deciphered yet,
Elena declared, voice sharp with barely contained triumph.
Those carvings. This creature, it guarded their treasure, drove those who strayed too close mad with fear.
Her smile sent a shiver down my spine, far colder than the ocean depths ever could.
If we find where they made those offerings...
Elena, this isn't some pirate movie, I protested. That thing down there isn't your lapdog. It's a predator. She scoffed, tossing her perfect hair over her shoulder.
And you, Dr. Harris, are supposed to be the brilliant problem solver. Figure it out, sedate the creature, build defenses. I don't care how. There's a fortune down there, and I intend to have it.
The next day brought a twist neither of us saw coming. A battered fishing vessel pulled alongside the Fortuna, its crew a mix of weathered locals and wide-eyed tourists. Turned out they'd picked up my suit's emergency beacon during a trawl. Word of a diver attacked by a sea monster had spread fast through the coastal villages. Elena wanted them gone, branded them rumor mongers. I, against my better judgment, brought them on board. What they told us made the hair stand up on the back of my neck. Whispers of an ancient evil lurking in those caves, a creature so old the sea itself obeyed it. Fishermen whose nets came up shredded, divers vanishing without a trace. The stories stretched back further than anyone could remember. I expected mockery, maybe threats from Elena. Instead, she went very still. Then that familiar predatory glint returned to her eyes, stronger than ever.
Superstition fuels empires,
she said softly, turning towards the mainland.
Find me the grandson of the oldest fisherman, someone the locals trust. Money will make them talk, show us where the old shrines might have been.
While Elena engaged in her ethically dubious negotiations, I wrestled with a different dilemma. The scientific curiosity warred with a building dread. We were stepping from the realm of discovery into something far more dangerous, a threshold best left uncrossed. It felt like that first, foolish moment when I cranked up the sonar in the drone, ignoring the warning lights. We ventured back into the caves. This time I wasn't alone. We had backup. Divers handpicked by Elena, ex-military types, with heavy-duty equipment and, worryingly, tranquilizer spear guns. I led the expedition, every nerve screaming in protest, and the eyes of the local guide boring into my back. He took us to a tunnel that felt wrong. The rock here was stained black, and the water tasted of rotten seaweed and old iron. The etchings turned grotesque, skeletal figures, mouths stretched in endless screams.
This is where the offerings happened,
the guide stammered, backing away from the carvings.
The cursed place. You won't find the treasure here, only death.
I should have listened. Should have dragged the whole crew back to the surface, back to the sanity of sunlight. Instead, driven by some mix of stubborn pride and the intoxicating allure of the unknown, I motioned forward. And that's when the sonar blipped, the signal so strong, it felt like a hammer blow to my skull. And from the darkness ahead, like a vast unfurling flower, a bioluminescent eye opened. And then another. Time warped underwater. Days blurred into nights as the Fortuna became an isolated bubble of relentless activity. I barely slept, my dreams a mix of Mayan carvings and monstrous glowing eyes. Elena had made a tactical retreat back to the mainland, conducting operations with ruthless efficiency from some luxurious villa, no doubt. She sent an endless stream of messages, progress updates, threats thinly veiled as inquiries, and the constant reminder of her dwindling patience. My focus narrowed to the creature, or rather, the problem it posed. Sleep-deprived and fueled by nervous energy, I plunged into a desperate cycle of innovation and failure. If we couldn't map the damn cave system without interference, there was no way in hell we'd get near any potential treasure. The drones became my battleground, Each loss, each mangled chunk of tech I retrieved, became a personal insult. The garbled footage and erratic sonar wasn't random malfunction anymore. The creature was learning. I wasn't dealing with animal instinct. This was cunning, a tactical mind toying with us. It stalked the probes, always staying out of sight, sabotaging them with precision. It wasn't even attacking directly anymore, just watching, letting us know it was there, that we were helpless.
This isn't some wildlife documentary, Harris.
Elena's voice crackled through the ship's radio, laced with a fury that eclipsed any fear of the lurking predator.
I'm running out of time and money. You solve this or this whole expedition gets scrapped. Understand?
The threat echoed in the confines of the control room. Around me, the crew pretended not to listen, but I saw the worry in their eyes. I'd gone from brilliant scientist to liability in a heartbeat. Yet, Elena's ultimatum ignited something in me, a stubborn defiance that bordered on reckless. I had the tech, had the brains. I'd bend them not toward the creature, but bypassing it. If it wanted to play games in the shadows, I'd make my own damn light. It took 36 hours of non-stop work, fueled by caffeine and sheer spite. The crew gave me space, a mix of respect and pity for the madman furiously rewiring and jury-rigging the next doomed drone.
Alex, you gotta take a break, bro.
My second-in-command, Ben, urged, handing me a mug of something that was probably once coffee. No time, I muttered, fingers flying over the keyboard. It's waiting for us to falter, to run. We need to go on the offensive. Finally, it was ready. A smaller drone, its casing reinforced, stripped down to the essentials. No fancy mapping arrays, no delicate sonar. This baby was built for one purpose, to pierce the darkness and fight back. The camera feed flickered on. Blurry at first, then sharp enough. The tunnel was empty, the usual claustrophobic limestone all around. Good. Then I hit the switch. The floodlights I'd jury-rigged to the drone blazed, a blinding burst of illumination that drowned out the gloom. The effect was staggering on the monitors. The tunnel walls sprang into harsh relief, and the shadows. They writhed, coiling back as if burned. For a moment, there was just that shock of light. Then a flicker, a shape solidifying at the edge of the illuminated area. I zoomed in, heart pounding. It was just a glimpse, a segmented tentacle tipped with a barb, shimmering with bioluminescence, withdrawing hastily from the light. But it was enough, more than enough. "I've got eyes on it," I yelled, relief so sharp it was almost pain. The crew burst into cheers, the tension of days finally cracking. "Sonic blasts," I said, already typing. "We overload its senses, keep it off balance long enough to..." I didn't have to finish the thought. Everyone knew the plan now. We weren't going to map around the creature. We were going to map through it. The drone surged forward, lights blazing a path into the cave. The sonar went haywire immediately, a discordant shriek that made my teeth ache. But then, the camera feed stabilized. More shadows, writhing, reforming, thrown into disarray by the strobing blasts of light and sound. It was working. Then something massive slammed into the drone. The picture went sideways, then tumbled into static. "No," I swore, pounding the console. Another drone dead, but we'd gotten further, deeper than ever before. We had proof, a pattern to its attacks, its vulnerabilities. A cold certainty settled in my gut. It was a war now, and we were finally starting to learn the rules. We wouldn't just endure the creature, we would outsmart it. Elena Sinclair wanted results, and by God, I'd give them to her. But it would be on my terms, or not at all. The plan was as simple as it was reckless. Blind the damn thing. I crammed the next drone with so many lights and sonic emitters that it resembled some bizarre deep-sea disco ball more than a research tool. If the light didn't outright hurt the creature, it would confuse and disorient it long enough to get visuals, to find some new weakness to exploit. Of course, to get close enough, someone had to pilot this monstrosity into the vault. That, dear reader, is where I crossed the line from dedicated scientist to utterly unhinged.
You're going down there yourself?
Ben stared at me like I'd grown a second head. The rest of the crew echoed similar sentiments, though with more colorful language. "It's my tech, My responsibility, I said, strapping into the control harness. Besides, who else understands how to maneuver this thing in the dark? That was only partly true. I also needed to see it firsthand, not through some pixelated feed, but up close, with my own eyes. To confirm this wasn't some fever dream, but the challenge of a lifetime. Elena's greed, the creature's monstrous form. It all boiled down to this one moment, one test. The descent was a disorienting symphony of flashing lights and the cacophony of the sonar. Every shadow danced with an artificial, blinding radiance that made my eyes throb. It had to be even worse for the creature. Then it appeared, sliding into view like an immense ghostly manta ray. Bioluminescence rippled across its body in mesmerizing, nauseating patterns. The true monstrousness of it was less the individual parts, and more how they fit together. The segmented, writhing tentacles, the pulsing sacs that might have been organs, and the ring of eyes that glowed with malevolent awareness as they focused on my little drone. This close, its age radiated from the screen, an alien presence older than the Mayan ruins, perhaps older than the very formation of the cave itself. This wasn't just a predator. This was something foundational, a keystone species of the abyss, twisted by time and isolation into this terrifying form. And it was on the attack. A tentacle whipped forward, faster than I'd ever imagined anything so massive could be. The drone swerved, my stomach twisting in sync with the tilting camera. It lashed out again and again, shattering external lights with each strike. I dodged, weaved, and unleashed a barrage of light and sound that made the ship's monitors flicker and whine. For a heart-stopping moment, it seemed to recoil. Then the bioluminescence flared, an overwhelming surge that made the camera feed go white, and my eyes scream in protest. When my vision cleared, there was only darkness. The drone's lights had been extinguished. Then, the inky gloom erupted with bioluminescent streaks as it closed in for the kill. Frantically, I mashed the controls for the backup power. The drone stuttered back to life, blinding flashes cutting through the gloom, forcing the creature to retreat. My hands shook as I piloted the battered drone back up the tunnel, flashes of teeth and glowing eyes pursuing us through the flickering strobe of light. The ascent was agonizingly slow. Every second felt like an hour, time measured by the pounding of my heart. We weren't just fleeing. We were running out of juice. It knew that too, redoubling its attacks. I felt a slam against the hull that nearly tipped us over, followed by a guttural roar from the crew. It broke surface alongside us. A tentacle as thick as an oak tree erupted from the waves, swiping at the Fortuna. It was so close, so monstrously, undeniably real, that the remaining rationale in my brain screamed to cut the cables and save the ship. But there on the screen pulsed an image more valuable than any gold. The creature in full detail. Every pulsating, chitinous, monstrous inch of it. My trembling hand hit record. Then it was upon us. Another tentacle wrapped around the drone, crushing the casing and ripping away the final lights. The footage went dead. I was left staring at the blackness of my own reflection in the dead monitor. It had me. The water surged as the Leviathan drew the drone under. "Cut him loose!" I think the yell came from Ben, or maybe it was me. There was the whine of a power saw, a final, violent jolt, and then I was falling. The icy water shocked my system into action. I tore off the harness, kicked for the surface with a primal burst of terror-fueled speed. The ship, bless them, was already turning, throwing me a lifeline. Strong hands hauled me on board, the crew a blur of shouting faces. Then came the roar, a deep abyssal bellow that vibrated through the deck, followed by the crash of the Fortuna lurching sideways as the creature struck the hull.
Move, damn it, move!
Elena Sinclair's shriek cut through the chaos. She was here, I realized distantly, flown back in when things got interesting. Well, she got her spectacle. The engines roared, and with a final monstrous splash, we sped away. I stood there, dripping on the deck, and watched the spot where the Leviathan had breached the surface. The water roiled, then grew still. Nothing was left but the fading daylight painting streaks of blood orange across the waves. The aftermath was messy. Elena stormed, cursing a streak of F-bombs that would have made the fishermen blush. Her investors demanded answers. Lawyers threatened. My footage circulated. Biologists were astounded. The Navy sent stern inquiries. Conspiracy theorists had a field day. The creature, my creature in a twisted way, became a sensation. In the control room, amidst the whirlwind of calls and demands, I was left oddly numb. The image of the creature, the brush with death, faded against the stark realization that none of it had actually changed anything fundamental. Especially not Elena Sinclair.
You think a few blurry photos scare me, Harris?
She cornered me, eyes glittering with a dangerous mix of fury and fascination.
That thing, it's the most valuable discovery in a century. Imagine capturing it, controlling it. It could rewrite biology, military tech.
Her voice trailed off, the unspoken hung heavy. Power, dominion, the type of wealth that makes plundered gold look like pocket change. And I, her reluctant tool, suddenly held the key. The question burned. Did I slam that door shut? Run as far as I could? Maybe warn some shadowy government agency? Or... The footage replayed in my head. That colossal form, a riddle of evolution, a force as implacable as the ocean itself. The creature hadn't just been a hurdle, it was the puzzle. That terrifying, tantalizing glimpse into an untouched world. How could I walk away from that? There's only one chance, I said slowly, and watched the predatory spark in Elena's eyes ignite. We don't hunt it. It hunts us. In the following weeks, I became an unwilling media darling. Elena played her part superbly, spinning the story, downplaying the danger, emphasizing the groundbreaking research potential. It bought us time, grudging funding from sources both legitimate and shady. The Fortuna was refitted, fortified like a strange, floating laboratory bristling with tech. Yet I spent sleepless nights on the deck, watching the waves for the glint of those ancient eyes in the moonlight, pondering the madness of it all. We weren't scientists on a daring expedition anymore. We were the bait in a trap of our own design. Then came the day. The sonar lit up, not a blip this time, but the ominous, massive form deep within the vault. We'd woven our net, and it had come, perhaps sensing our intent, or simply driven by a hunger that dwarfed our ambitions. On the screen, Elena's knuckles went white on the console. My pulse thrummed a steady, battle-worn beat. This was it. The moment fame turned into infamy, or something akin to legend. The first reports went out on a carefully curated social media feed I managed, a lifeline to the outside world, and a way to control the narrative. Or so I believed. First-hand footage of the confrontation, the creature's bioluminescent fury, my carefully worded updates on our innovative containment strategies. It went viral, a flood of likes, terrified comments, and offers from dubious research organizations. For a brief, intoxicating moment, I, Alex Harris, stood at the center of the storm. As the likes and followers rolled in, a different, darker sort of question wormed its way into my battle-weary mind. What if I succeeded? What if the creature in the vault became my greatest achievement? My name echoing through history, not as the one who warned the world, but as the one who tamed the beast. The Fortuna rocked, a monstrous surge echoing through the hull. I snapped out of my reverie and ran towards the control room, the siren call of the unknown echoing louder than any online applause ever could. This, the hunt, was the only truth that mattered now. The fame, the money, the warnings, all meaningless against the thrilling, terrifying question etched into the depths. Would we be the trappers or the trapped? Let the world wonder. For now, there was a creature to face.
We hope you have enjoyed this episode of Quantum Dispatches and stay tuned next week for another thrilling adventure. Thank you for listening.